Hey everybody, it's May from Black Mountain Faith, and today I need to do day 13, chapters 41 and 42 in Genesis. So if that seems interesting, just stay tuned. Okay friends, so I did finish my study guide last night, but now I just want to film all my videos as I put my notes in before I release it today. So we ended up with Joseph interpreting the cupbearer and the baker's dreams, and they came true. The cupbearer was restored to his position with all his titles, everything he'd had before. He was put into prison. And of course, the baker was hanged 3 days later, just as Joseph had interpreted his dream. So the only thing Joseph had asked was, when the cupbearer was being released from prison, was, please remember me. And of course, we know at the end of chapter 40, it says, yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to start on chapters 41. It says, Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dreams. So after 2 whole years, whoa. So 2 years goes by after the cupbearer is restored to his position and he's released from prison and the baker is put to death. It says, Pharaoh dreamed that he was standing by the Nile, and behold, there came up out of the Nile 7 cows, attractive and plump, and they fed in the reed grass. And behold, 7 other cows, ugly and thin, came up out of the Nile after them, and stood by the other cows on the bank of the Nile. And the ugly, thin cows ate up the 7 attractive, plump cows. And Pharaoh woke up, and he fell asleep and dreamed a second time. And behold, 7 ears of grain, plump and good, were growing on one stalk. And behold, after them sprouted 7 ears, thin and blighted by the east wind. And then the thin ears swallowed up the 7 plump, full ears. And Pharaoh woke up, and behold, it was a dream. So in the morning his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all its wise men. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but there was none who could interpret them to Pharaoh. So Pharaoh is very distressed here. He doesn't know what these dreams mean, but he knows that there's something going on, and he knows that this is something very serious. It's not just he went to sleep and had these weird dreams. He wakes up and knows this is something significant. I need to know what these dreams mean. So basically, no one can interpret them for Pharaoh. And then the chief cupbearer says to Pharaoh, I remember my offenses today, when Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me and the chief baker in custody in the house of the captain of the guard. We dreamed on the same night, he and I, each having a dream with its own interpretation. A young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. When we told him, he interpreted our dream to us, giving an interpretation to each man according to his dream. And as he interpreted to us, so it came about. I was restored to my office, and the baker was hanged. So finally, the chief cupbearer remembers, Joseph, and he tells the Pharaoh, this Hebrew was able to do it, so you might want to, talk to him. And it says, then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they quickly brought him out of the pit. Oh, that's kind of scary that he was in a pit. And when he had shaved himself and changed his clothes, he came in before Pharaoh, and Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have had a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, it is not in me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. And then Pharaoh repeats his dream to him. So Joseph is not taking credit for an ability to interpret dreams as his own. He's saying, it's not in me. It's only because of God that I'll be able to interpret it. So Pharaoh agrees to go ahead and tell him his dream. So once he's done talking, Joseph says to Pharaoh, the dreams of Pharaoh are one. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 ears. The dream are one. So it's not 2 sets of 7 years consecutively, it's all together. So it's only 7 years. So he says, the 7 lean and ugly cows that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty ears blighted by the east wind are also 7 years of famine. It is as I told Pharaoh. God has shown to Pharaoh what he is about to do. There will come 7 years of great plenty, all the land of Egypt, but after them will arise 7 years of famine, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt. The famine will consume the land, and the plenty will be unknown in the land by reason of the famine that will follow. It will be very severe. And the doubling of Pharaoh's dream means that the thing is fixed by God, and God will shortly bring it about. And therefore let Pharaoh select a discerning and wise man and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh proceed to appoint overseers over the land and take 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt during the 7 plentiful years, and let them gather all the food of these good years that are coming and store up grain under the authority of Pharaoh for food in the cities, and let them keep it. That food shall be a reserve for the land against the 7 years of famine that are to occur in the land of Egypt, so that the land may not perish through the famine. So he says, the 7 good ears and the 7 good cows are 7 years of abundance and plenty. So we're going to have really good looking livestock. We're going to have really good looking vegetation and grain. And that's what we need to do. We need to be stockpiling all this. Let everybody who's a farmer or takes care, or a herdsman of any kind, they need to give Pharaoh 1/5 of everything that they have for the next 7 years. And you need to get some really, really smart people that you can trust that are overseeing the entire thing, and make sure that this is being stockpiled for real, because the 7 ugly cows and the 7 blighted ears of corn, that means 7 severe years of famine, where people are not even going to remember that they just had 7 good years of plenty. It's just going to be a thought in the wind. They're not even going to remember it. And the fact that you had one dream right after the other on the same night means it is coming. God is going to do this for sure, and it's coming soon. So the notes that I took on this right here was, this chapter details a turning point in Joseph's life. Pharaoh has a set of troubling dreams that no one can interpret. The chief cupbearer remembers Joseph's ability to interpret dreams and suggests Pharaoh call upon him. Pharaoh recounts his dreams of 7 fat cows being devoured by 7 skinny cows, followed by a second dream of 7 heads of grain withering after 7 shriveled ones. Joseph tells the Pharaoh that the 2 dreams are one and the same. He interprets the dreams as a prediction of 7 years of abundant harvests, followed by 7 years of devastating famine. Joseph advises the Pharaoh to appoint a wise leader to oversee the collection and storage of grain during the plentiful years to prepare for the famine. Now, impressed by Joseph's interpretation and plan, Pharaoh elevates Joseph to a position of great authority, second only to himself. Joseph is given an Egyptian wife and begins to implement his plan to ensure Egypt's survival during the coming famine. And we know that's true because it says Joseph rises to power. It says, and Pharaoh said to his servants, "Can we find a man like this in whom is the Spirit of God?" Now they know they can't because they believe in their Egyptian gods. They don't believe in the one God of the Hebrews, So it says, then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has shown you all this, there is none so discerning and as wise as you are. You shall be over my house, and all of my people shall order themselves as you command. Only as regards the throne will I be greater than you." And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "See, I have set you over all the land of Egypt." Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, and clothed him in garments of fine linen, and put a gold chain around his neck. And he made him ride in the second chariot. And they called out before him, bow the knee. Thus he set him over all the land of Egypt. Moreover, Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without your consent no one shall lift up hand or foot in all of the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphenath-paneah. I think that's how you say it. And he gave him in marriage Asnath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On. So Joseph went out over the land of Egypt. So Joseph is no longer a prisoner. He's not looked at as just a Hebrew. It says Joseph's rise to power is not based on his social status whatsoever. It's based on his God-given talents and wisdom. The chapter emphasizes the importance of foresight and planning for future challenges. And so that's a message that we can take into our everyday lives, that God wants us to look into what is going on in our environment, what is going on in our home, and he wants us to have the foresight to know what we need to do for future challenges that are coming to us specifically. That's a lesson and an application that we can use in our everyday life, found right here in chapter 41 of Genesis in the Old Testament. So Joseph's faithfulness in interpreting dreams and proposing a solution is rewarded with a position of great power and authority. And it says, Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went through all the land of Egypt. During the 7 plentiful years of the earth produced abundantly. And he gathered up all the food of these 7 years, which occurred in the land of Egypt. And he put the food in the cities. He put in every city the food from the fields around it. And Joseph stored up grain in great abundance, like the sand of the sea, until he ceased to measure it, for it could not be measured. Can you imagine how much grain you have to be storing up to where you're not even ticking it off on papyrus anymore, or papyri, you know what I mean, of how much you're storing up, because it cannot be measured. The numbers are just so great. That means as Joseph is continuing to do this, and he knows he can't even count it anymore, it's beyond measure. He's still continuing to do it because he is a man of faith, and he knows the famine will be that severe that it doesn't matter if you can count it anymore. You still got to collect it. You still got to get it. It says, before the year of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph. Asnath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, bore them to him. Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for he said, God has made me forget all my hardship and all my father's house. The name of the second he called Ephraim, for God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. And then it ends chapter 41 saying, the 7 years of plenty that occurred in the land of Egypt came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began to come, as Joseph had said. There was famine in all lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. When all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, go to Joseph. What he says to you, do. When the famine had spread over all the land, Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe in the land of Egypt. Moreover, all the earth came to Egypt to Joseph to buy grain, because the famine was severe over all the earth. So it's not just localized here in Egypt, okay? What he did was all the fields and the surrounding areas close to the Egyptian cities, that's where he stored the grain, was in the cities closest to those fields. But when the famine comes, it's not just affecting Egypt, it's affecting all the earth. And I put, a devastating famine is all over Egypt as well as Canaan, forcing Jacob to send his 10 sons to Egypt to buy grain. Unbeknownst to them, the powerful figure in charge of grain distribution is their long-lost brother Joseph, who has risen to prominence in Egyptian government. Because they find out here in 42, it says Jacob learned that there was grain for sale in Egypt, and he said to his sons, why do you look at one another? And he said, behold, I have heard that there is grain for sale in Egypt. Go down and buy grain for us, that we may live and not die. So they all get on their camels and they're going. But Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brother, with his brothers, for he feared that harm might happen to him. As we remember, Rachel only had 2 children, Joseph and Benjamin, and she died in childbirth with Benjamin. And Jacob, Jacob has always shown favoritism towards, Rachel's biological children, not the children born to Rachel's, concubine for Jacob, but for her specifically, biological children. And he believes that Joseph was, torn apart by wild animals, and he's still very upset about that. He doesn't realize that his sons sold him into slavery. So now it says, now Joseph was governor over the land. He was the one who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brother came and bowed themselves before him with their faces to the ground. Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them, but he treated them like strangers and spoke roughly to them. But really quickly, it says, and Joseph's brothers came and bowed themselves before him with their faces to the ground. So, as we remember back here, Joseph had told them, he had interpreted his own dream. And it's funny that they were, stalks of grain. Because he was, he said that he was going to his brothers were going to bow down to him. And they were like, what, you're going to be in charge of us? Well, sure enough, it has come to pass. They need to buy grain. And they are bowing down to the ground in front of Joseph because it's come to fruition. Okay. So he recognizes them. They don't recognize him. And he's going to be a little snippy with them, right? He says, where'd you come from? And they said, from the land of Canaan to buy food. And Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. And Joseph remembered the dreams that he had dreamed of them. So I kind of skipped ahead a little faster, but yeah, it's just like he had dreamed. And he said to them, you are spies, you have come to see the nakedness of the land. And they said to him, no, my lord, your servants have come to buy food. We are all sons of one man. We are honest men. Your servants have never been spies. He said to them, no, it is the nakedness of the land that you've come to see. And they said, we, your servants, are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest is this day with our father, and one is no more. But Joseph said to them, it is as I said to you, you are spies. By this you shall be tested, by the life of Pharaoh. You shall not go from this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you, and let him bring your brother, while you remain confined, that your words may be tested, whether there is truth in you, or else by the life of Pharaoh, surely you are spies. And he put them all together in custody for 3 days. So he locks them up. He's like, no, I don't want to hear it. They're like, no, we're not spies. We're here to buy food. We're all 12 brothers, One has passed away. They're not going to tell the truth that they sold him. And they're saying, they basically one is still with dad, back in Canaan. And Joseph's like, nah, it's not true. It's either, you let me keep one of you and you bring the young one to prove your story, or as far as me, Pharaoh, all of Egypt is concerned, you're spies. So he locks them up. It says, on the 3rd day, Joseph said to them, do this and you will live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers remain confined where you are in custody, and let the rest go and carry grain for the famine for your households, and bring your youngest brother to me. So your words will be verified, and you shall not die. And they did so. Then they said to one another, in truth, we are guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the distress of his soul when he begged us, and we did not listen. That is why the distress has come upon us. And Reuben answered them, did I not tell you not to sin against the boy, but you did not listen? So now there comes a reckoning for his blood. Because they're pretty sure, if he was sold into Egypt, if he was sold to the Hittites as a slave, they're pretty sure he's dead. They don't even have any faith that he would still be alive. And they did not know that Joseph understood them, for there was no interpreter between them. Then he turned away from them and wept. And he returned to them and spoke to them, and he took Simon from them and bound them before his eyes. And Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain, and to replace every man's money in his sack, and to give them provisions for the journey. This was done for them. So they're talking in front of him about the regret and the remorse that they have over what they did to Joseph, thinking that this Egyptian grain guy can't understand a word they're saying. And it is so heartbreaking for Joseph to hear the remorse in their voice about what they did, that he has to turn his back to them, and he cries, because it's heartbreaking to hear your own family talking about, I mean, can you imagine if your 10 other brothers had tried to kill you and then ended up deciding to just throw you in a pit and sell you into slavery? And now they feel remorseful about it. How would you feel? Like, would you cry about it, or would you just snap at them, And that's what Joseph is dealing with here. So he basically takes Simon and he says, here, take all this grain, go back home, feed yourself and your families. I don't want you to die in the famine, but you need to bring that younger brother back to prove you're not spies, to get Simon out of jail. And so they're like, okay, and they think they're going to be leaving the next day so they can go home to Canaan and get Benjamin and bring him back to prove, that they did have a younger brother, that they're not spies. They're going to need to buy grain. They're thinking the famine, is going to be over pretty soon, because they don't know. They're Canaanites. They're Hebrews. They're from the land of Canaan. They don't have the inside information that Egypt does. You know what I'm saying? So they're thinking, it's probably going to be over soon. And what they don't know is that Joseph replaces all the money that they paid for the grain in everybody's sack. And it says, as one of them opened their sack to give to his donkey fodder at the lodging place, he saw his money in the mouth of the sack. And he said to his brothers, my money has been put back. Here it is in the mouth of my sack. At this, their hearts failed them, and they turned trembling to one another, saying, what is this that God has done to us? Now they're like, oh my God, he's not only accusing us of being spies, now he's going to think we're thieves, So the notes that I put is, driven by hunger, Jacob's sons traveled to Egypt seeking food. Upon arrival, they bowed low before the Egyptian official seeking grain sales, all along not realizing that they are bowing down to Joseph, just like in his dreams. Joseph knows who they are and remains disguised and speaks harshly to them. And what I mean by disguised is, we all know how the Egyptians would wear the headdress. They would wear all the eye makeup. And then if you took it all off, you know what I mean? You could see that they had hair, because a lot of their headdresses would cover the fact that they were either clean shaven or that they would hide their hair underneath. So he stays in Egyptian garb, is basically what I'm saying here. And so, and he speaks harshly to them, accusing them of being spies. Joseph throws Simon in jail as a hostage and demands they return with Benjamin to prove their honesty. The brothers are racked with guilt over what they did to Joseph and fear of the accusations of the grain official. So they're scared of what Joseph is thinking about them. But in their heart, they're not guilty of what he's calling them. They're not guilty of being spies, but they are guilty of doing Joseph harm. So I put okay, wait a minute, we're going to finish this up. So they get back and they tell Jacob, they're like, we got to go back and we got to take Benjamin with us. And they're telling him all of this, and they said, the man, the Lord of the land, spoke roughly to us and took us to be spies of the land. But we said to him, we are honest men. We have never been spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is no more, and the youngest is this day with our father in the land of Canaan. And then the man, the Lord of the land, said to us, by this I shall know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers with me, and take grain for the famine for your households, and go your way. Bring your youngest brother to me, then I shall know that you are not spies but honest men, and I will deliver your brother to you, and you shall trade in the land. So in other words, you're not going to get any more grain from me until you do this. You're not going to see my face. I'm not going to talk to you. We're not going to deal with you. You're going to have to bring that little one with you the next time you come, which is Benjamin, or you're not getting Simon back and you ain't getting no food. Okay? And it says, as they emptied their sacks, behold, every man's bundle of money was in his sacks. And when they and their father saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. And Jacob their father said to him, you have bereaved me of my children. Joseph is no more, and Simon is no more. And now you would take Benjamin? All of this has come against me. Then Reuben said to his father, kill my 2 sons if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my hands, and I will bring him back to you. But he said," and they're talking about Jacob, "My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is the only one left. If harm should happen to him on the journey that you are about to make, you would bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to Sheol." So the main themes in chapter 42 here is, okay, we've got some focus on family reconciliation, right? It's kind of like a complex reunion between the brothers filled with hope and a lot of tension. So you're like, as you're reading it, you're hoping that Joseph lets them know who he is, and they can, like, be reconciled. They can start to work on the healing of what the brothers did to him. So you got this family reconciliation, but you got all this tension because he's like, "You're spies," and he throws them in jail. Then he lets them out of jail and keeps one and says, "Bring me the other." It's just like, it's a roller coaster. And then you have deception and forgiveness. Joseph's actions with his brothers raises questions about forgiveness, justice, and revenge. So we're not even sure at this point, we're pretty sure with Joseph's character that he'll forgive them. But at the same time, the way he's accusing them of things and also being nice to them, it's like, is he going to forgive them? Is he going to seek justice? Is he going to seek revenge? What's going to happen? So we have this hidden identity and recognition. So it explores the concepts of hidden identity and the power of recognition, with Joseph remaining unknown to his brothers. Guilt and regret, the brothers' internal struggle with guilt over Joseph. And then, of course, divine providence. We don't hear God talking outright to Joseph or to the brothers or even to Jacob as he has done in the past. But it's like, though it's not mentioned, there's a possibility of God's hand, working in behind the scenes, so that we can get through these events and maybe lead to a reconciliation. But we also know that in the Old Testament, not everything works out perfectly. If God feels like you're wicked, you're put to death. So we just don't know which way we're going to go here. But that was the end of chapter 42. The next reading will be on chapter 43 through 45. Okay? So I'll get my notes written up, because as you can see, I've got all my clip art. And I have done my study guide, so I just got to transcribe it. And we'll be back for another video. But I hope you guys liked chapter 41 and 42. Personally, I'm a sucker for any story in the Bible that mentions Egypt. I don't know. It's just me. But I hope to see you guys in another video, and y'all have a wonderful day. Bye!